Hello and welcome to Sin and Steel, the heavy metal podcast. I'm your host, Serotonin, and in this episode, we're looking at what's new in metal. We're skipping the news today and changing things up a little from what I normally do in these ones, but we will kick off by talking about whatever I've been up to across the previous month, like some recaps and reviews of all the gigs I went to, which for this past month includes Drencher Fest. And then we'll look at some standout new releases, such as the new album No Place for the Damned by Tantrum from Scotland, who joined me for a chat to tell us all about the tracks and their new lineup. And we'll feature a full-length track for you to listen to right here in the episode. Now, if you're new here or you haven't already picked up on how things work around here, and by here I mean the YouTube releases specifically, the little list to my left here that appears throughout the video will tell you where to go for each of these sections. So if you want to jump ahead or go back to anything in particular, do that. Otherwise, sit back and let's talk all things August. So what have I been up to? What has been giving Serotonin some serotonin? Well, there have been all sorts of things happening, some of which you may already know about if you have been following along on social media. One of which is that I have a new theme song. So I put a call out on social media a little while back for people who might be able to help, and I had a bunch of people reach out in response, with a few even offering to do it for free, which was really, really sweet of them. There was no way I was going to have someone do this without paying them for their time and effort, but I think it really goes to show how supportive the metal community can be in getting behind projects like this, and I really appreciated the offers. In the end, I commissioned Nat of Naticus Music and the Incantus to write the new tune for the show, and he absolutely nailed it. I mean, this is what he does. He is a composer, and that is part of why I ended up going with Nat in the end, because there was just that confidence in it being done professionally. But I also knew that he was familiar enough with the show that he could really get the vibe. And again, I think he nailed it, and I'm just so stoked with how it came out. I haven't started using it yet because I really want to create an animated intro to go along with it. And while I have started sketching this out, I'm kind of questioning my concept a little bit, so I need to think on it a little bit more, and then it's going to be a massive project. So either way, I don't know how long it's going to take because it's massive. But you might as well have a listen now because it's fucking rad. Something else really cool is that I've been invited to jump on the radio. Kenny, who runs the Burning Bitumen show on PBS every Tuesday night, has invited me to join him as a guest on the 17th of September, 10 p.m. Melbourne time. I have my track list ready to go, and I had a lot of fun picking the tunes for this one. So if you want to go and check it out, you can jump across to 106.7 FM or go to pbsfm.org.au to listen through your browser. I'll also put the links in the episode description. It's already up on Facebook, and it will be shared out on Instagram ahead of time so that you can be linked straight across. In terms of live shows, I feel like I have to backtrack a little bit here because in July, which I skipped an episode on, I saw Municipal Waste play at the Northcote Theatre, where they were supported by Stepmother, Hacker and Gutless for an absolutely mint night. I felt like a fucking teenager. I was so excited for this gig. Like, Municipal Waste was a bucket list type show for me. Northcote Theatre is a really good venue as well, and I managed to quite easily get a spot up along the front rail, just off to the side a bit so that I wouldn't get destroyed by crowd surfers, of which there were shitloads. Gutless were first on with some great death metal, decent sound, and it was a good way to start the night. Hacker are hardcore, kind of power violency, and were awesome. Their vocalist like absolutely cracked me up because she was this really awkward and introverted person when she spoke, but then belted out these brutal vocals with a killer stage presence when she sang. And Stepmother, they felt like a weird one, but they were really fun with these cool surf rock vibes. And they gave us a little bit of time to chill before Municipal Waste came on. Municipal Waste were lucky their bassist Landfill made it up on stage though. Poor bloke lost his lanyard and the security guard was like, dude, you look like every other metal guy here. He kind of turned to us and asked us in the crowd if he was in the band. And I kind of nodded, and then the guy next to me starts going, oh, I'm in the band too. So, you know, hard for them to trust us in that sense. And we had to let them figure it out on their own. The pit was absolute chaos, and the crowd surfing just never stopped. Like, these guys absolutely killed it, and it was just so good getting to hear their music live. I also went out for Eviscerate the Evelyn, which was the launch show for the Born of a Bastard Kings EP Eviscerate. They played alongside Cunt Squad, Scaffus, Pendle Hill, and Coffin Carousel, and it was a wicked show. I might not break this one down right now, but there was a great mix of bands, good sound, good crowd, except that most of the younger folks pissed off after Pendle Hill and even more after Scaffus, leaving Cunt Squad with a half-empty room, which kind of pissed me off a bit because I've seen it happen before, particularly with the younger crowds leaving after their mate's band went on, and I don't know, it just feels a little bit shitty sometimes. Of course, I was supposed to see Tenacious D that month as well, but I'm sure everyone knows that that didn't go ahead, so I was pretty bummed about that. And it went on for cancellations from there, because in August we had the Judas Priestess show postponed. I had to sell my tickets to see Disentomb and Abramelin because I was so fucking sick. And then there was the Skeletal Remains cancellation. It wasn't all doom and gloom though, because I still had 3 shows for the month. With the first being Psychroptic down at Singing Bird Studio in Frankston, where they were supported by Flaming Wreckage, Cypress and Trepicide. Trepicide did a stand-up job. Cypress were fucking bizarre, but really interesting, kind of like Mr. Bungle type shit. But I didn't really get to enjoy them properly. There was a woman doing some photography and she was stood up on a stool directly in front of me, and it wasn't so much the lack of view that bothered me, it was that this was right on the edge of the pit, so I just couldn't fucking relax. Because I was waiting for someone to knock her down and I'm standing there like waiting like I'm trying to catch a football, and I just find it hard to switch that off sometimes. So I ended up tapping her on the shoulder when the pit was getting a bit rowdier, and she did kind of say, you know, she was completely oblivious to what was going on and thanked me, but I did feel like I would look like a total fucking Karen tapping her on the shoulder. Anyway, Flaming Wreckage were really fucking good. And I'm stoked because I'll be seeing them again soon, and I want to check them out when I'm, not coming down from a panic attack. And Psychroptic killed it as always. There was something up with the sound on the vocals though. It sounded like there was like an effect on, and whenever it switched the sound, that went down too far, which was a shame. But otherwise, it was a really good show, and I hadn't seen them in a smaller venue like that in quite a while, so that made me very happy. The biggest for the month was Drencher Fest at the Barwon Club Hotel in Geelong, which featured Pizza Death, Amorium, Nicolas Cage Fighter, Hidden Intent, Munitions, Life Deprived, Snake Mountain, Bog Monster, Hematemesis, and Tone Marrow. It took me about 3 hours to get to Geelong that day and then 2.5 back, but it was worth every fucking second of that drive. The organisers of this event went all out and absolutely nailed it. They decked the bar out in the Drencher theme, complete with the blue and green lighting theme, and a little boat front where everyone was posing like they were in the Titanic. They had pop culture show bags that included a faux Drencher tape. This thing cracked me up when I realised that it's just a second-hand tape in a Drencher wrapping with like a little QR code in there to a playlist. I think that's even better in a way. I just love it. Plus mine has like divinals and shit on it. And with such a stellar lineup of bands, there was also so much merch to pick from, like this Pizza Death shirt. It ended up being a crazy social event for me where I got to catch up with some friends and make some new ones, including a bunch of wonderful folks from the Melbourne Metal Mates group. There was a great mix of bands, kicking off with some angry-ass doom and long songs from Tone Marrow. Into fast and furious grindcore from Hematemesis. Slowing things back down again with Bog Monster's Sludge, who I really enjoyed. And then we had some awesome death metal from Snake Mountain. This was an experience. The footy was on that day, which meant that the front bar was packed, and being an all-day event, people still needed to get some food into them. It happened that when our food arrived, the only table available was on the floor opposite the stage. So my mate Luke and I got to enjoy our Palmers in the pit during Snake Mountain's set. while Luke was like just waiting for someone to come and crowd kill our table and lose our Palmers. They were great though, and Nev is a fantastic frontman. I ended up going and having a bit of a chat with him afterwards and talked all things podcasts, because he runs the Ever Black podcast, and he gave me loads of advice and encouragement, which I really appreciated. It was really lovely of him to do. Life Deprived then gave us some more doom with some melodic aspects to it that I really loved. And if it wasn't obvious enough by the attire on stage, I could hear some acid bath influence here that made me really, really happy. Munitions, I mean, you know I love what they're doing. They were great. And they got everyone worked up in the pit by throwing out a bunch of beach balls so that shit really got moving after that. Hidden Intent are always a good time, and they absolutely brought it. Nicolas Cage Fighter, a kind of crossover thrash with some death and a whole lot of hardcore. I've been wanting to catch a show of theirs for a while because they are fun as hell, and this was a fucking good one. But you know, with the core side of things, that I kept my distance for this one, or I would have been out of commission for the rest of the show. We jumped back into some death metal from there with Amorium, who were really melodic, and they just felt really grand. And of course, the night finished off with Pizza Death, who play crossover thrash that is fucking ridiculous and amazing. In the pit, we had not only the lobster who'd been rocking around all night, but a shark, a garlic bread, and then we had an inflatable shark that was being thrown around and ridden. It was just chaotic and beautiful. And then I made the last minute decision to go and see Pizza Death again the next weekend at Singing Bird Studio in Frankston, where they were supported by Party Vibes, Organ Donor, Axe and Breeze, Nebulum, Double Barrel Mega Doob, and Goat Coffin. One of the things that I really love about Singing Bird Studio is that they run all ages shows, so you get to see all the youngsters coming in and enjoying heavy music and having fun. And Frankston is a particularly good spot for this because it just goes off and those kids go fucking nuts. So I unfortunately rocked in a bit too late for Goat Coffin, but I did catch Double Barrel Mega Doob, what a name, and they were great. No surprises here, they played doomy stoner metal with some hints of death. Nebulum in appearance were like straight up, they just looked straight up hardcore, but their sound for me lent way into metal and far enough metal for me. And they put on a really good show and I enjoyed what they did. Axe and Breeze were this experimental, gothic, industrial something or other. I don't know. There were a couple of songs I was kind of getting into, but otherwise it just wasn't really the type of thing I can stay focused on at a show. I found myself paying more attention to the crowd where the kids were getting up on each other's shoulders and wrestling. There was a young girl up the back, like practically boxing with a guy, just throwing full-blown punches at his face. I actually ended up having a chat with her online since, and so I told her that I think she's fucking nuts, but in the best way. Absolute legend. Organ Donor were great. Party Vibes had apparently not played a show for quite a few years, but they smashed it. And then Pizza Death, they ate once again. Now let's talk recent metal releases. As always, I can't sit here and list them all because there are hundreds of releases each month, but I do my best to go through all the ones I can find, and I'll give you the ones that stood out to me. If you'd like to watch the full version of any clips I share here, they're included in the Sin and Steel New Releases playlist, available in the Songs from the Episode section of my YouTube page. We're gonna start with a couple of doomy releases, the first of which is the album Death Divine by Hail Darkness from the US. This is their first album, but it kind of bringing together some tracks that they had previously done as singles and some 2-track EPs. This is like a cult rock, doomy deliciousness that has a bit of a 60s and 70s vibe, complete with the satanic, not panic, because this feels like one big satanic ritual in the best way. And we had Sidewinder from New Zealand drop the album Talons, which is the first album of theirs with their new vocalist, Jem. And she fucking kills this. It's stoner doom with crunchy bass, heavy blues influences, and it's just full of passion with like this perfect timing in the way that this has been composed. For power metal, we had All for Metal from Germany and Italy release their second album, Gods of Metal. It feels weird that this is only their second album because these guys were really clever about how they've released the last one and this one with loads of single releases in the build-up. So they kind of took off immediately when their first album came out and already like made such a big name for themselves that they feel like they've been around forever. I say that knowing that some of them already had their own projects outside of this, so technically they had been around in another way, but you know what I mean. Anyway, this was a pretty solid follow-up from Legends with its punchy power metal, catchy choruses, and some heavy inspiration from arena-style rock bands. And of course, power metal giants Hammerfall from Sweden dropped the new album Avenge the Fallen. It's Hammerfall. It's anthemic, catchy, classic power metal that stays true to their iconic sound while still delivering something new. I think they've smashed it with this one, and I am just so fucking pumped that they are coming back to Australia next year. For traditional, Siege Perilous from the US released the EP Creation's Call, which is epic fantasy, kind of powery, but mostly just traditional. It has rock elements that are really fun. If I'm honest, it isn't all there yet. But I did want to highlight them here anyway, because I think that the first couple of tracks on this were really cool. And I think these guys have a lot of potential, so, you know, I want to keep an eye out on what they're doing. while this next one isn't a new album or EP, I thought this one would be really fun to share anyway, and it kind of fits here in the traditional space. So the Melbourne Heavy Choir, which may be familiar to some of the OG sinners because we talked about them a little bit in my episode about women in metal, where we had one of my guests, Alyssa, who runs deadlifts and death metal. She ran a warm-up and stretching session at one of the Heavy Choir shows. Anyway, in celebration of the Aussie Iron Maiden shows, they did a cover of Aces High with a great tribute video to go along with it. And they filmed it down at the Moorabbin Air Museum, which is really cool. By the time this episode goes up, the shows will have been done. I mean, while I'm sitting here, I'm about to leave to go to my one. But hey, I know I'll still be riding high for a while after it finishes. So hopefully you guys will still get a kick out of it later on. The link to the original video is in the episode description, so go and check out the full clip and watch this space because I might see if I can tee something up with their crew in the coming months. And the final release I wanted to talk about in the traditional space is, of course, No Place for the Damned by Tantrum. They are from Scotland, and for this one we have Markuz, Baz, Micah and Mark to talk us through it. Thank you guys for joining me. It's really nice to have you here. Before we do talk new music, I'd really love to get to know Tantrum a little bit. So it looks like you guys formed back in 2014. You've got 2 full-length releases and 3 EPs under your belt. But what else can you share about the band, the formation, your creative goals and how things have been going up until now? Just all of the things.
I think Marcus should field this one. It's a long story.
He's always got the best version of the story too.
I joined the band in 2021. They'd been looking for a singer since I think it was 2019. They played their last gig right before lockdown, and they've been looking for a singer ever since. And I just kind of stumbled into the position because I wasn't really a singer, and I'd only just released 3 solo albums and had to sing on them. So when I went, I saw that they were looking for a singer, and I thought, that'll be something fun to do. And I contacted this guy called Stu, and Stu sent me 3 songs to record vocals on, which I promptly did, and then realised I didn't actually like the rest of the album. I felt really terrible because I'd then committed to going for an audition with a band that I didn't really like the music of. But what I ended up doing was I stripped all the vocals off of the album and I just re-recorded the whole album the way that I would normally have done it.
Okay.
And it completely changed the perspective, and I thought, this is actually really pretty good. When the melodies have been changed and there's been more space left, I felt like there wasn't enough space given for the vocals.
Yep, okay.
It was clearly written by guitarists. Guitarists tend to write from a riff perspective than from a song perspective. I'm not right, Baz.
Yeah, it happens.
So, once I did that, I thought to myself, this is actually not bad. And then not long after I joined, Steve, which was the principal writer in the band, he left, and Baz came in. And from that point on, everybody else in the band left. So there was nobody left from the original lineup. And Baz was basically starting from scratch.
Yep,
Makes
okay.
it sound like...
We drove them away.
Hostile takeover.
Yeah.
So is
Feels
this...
like that something.
Is the new stuff the first with the new lineup, or was the last one at what stage?
So the last album had 3/5 of the current band on it. Because I joined shortly before we recorded Another Life.
Yeah.
But Yeah. The new album is the first recordings that we've got with the entirety of the new band on it.
Awesome.
Micah was
Awesome. That's
based on
really
the last
exciting.
album.
Yeah. On Another Life, I was the bass player originally. That was what I got brought in for.
Yep.
And then obviously after Stu left the band, we kind of figured like essentially what Mark and Baz told me was it would be a waste to not have you on guitar.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
Recognized what you could do and brought you into the right role.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Oh, here's the other Mark.
Oh, hello.
Mark II, fashionably
We'll
late
give him
and on mute.
we'll give him a second.
So like him too.
Oh,
And sideways.
and sideways.
Mark, you're on mute and you're sideways.
Oh, this is classic Zoom.
Oh, there's always something like every
It was like 2020 all over again.
But yeah, this new album, this is the first album with all of us, with Chris now on bass, and Mark on drums.
Hello.
And, hello, he's there.
Hey,
Can you all hear me? I'm so sorry.
That's okay. Look, we did start kicking off without you, so I hope you don't mind. But we haven't been going for too long, so you're all good.
Cool.
Okay, so so completely new lineup. And I guess since then, getting everyone together, what sort of difference has that made creatively? And what are you guys doing?
I think creatively on this album in particular, like when you look at the credits, like there's a lot more collaboration with the songwriting and to a lesser extent the lyrics as well. So in the old kind of lineups, it was often one or two people would write and bring a song in, and it would get played that way, and it was very much a solo vision. Whereas through recording, when Another Life or second album was getting mixed, Marcus and I were throwing ideas back and forth and very much tossing it into a melting pot and creating the new songs that are on the new album.
Yeah.
We're very much writing from the perspective of what would we like to hear on a heavy metal album? What's all the good stuff that we love about metal? So that can be like Maiden, Judas Priest, Testament, Metallica, Slayer. That all gets put into the blender. Even like Dream Theater and stuff like that, progressive influences. It gets put into a blender and we go, right, well, how can we mold that into the Tantrum kind of sound?
Yep.
So that's where we're going. We're trying to progress musically, but still hold on to what people would know us for at the same time. So just always evolving, but hopefully in a good way. Yeah,
no, I love that. And I was actually really curious about some of your inspirations because, there's a very like new album, new wave of British heavy metal sound to it. There's a bit of power metal kind of feeling there. There's that epicness. So that's really cool. That's really, really cool. In terms of, so the new album, No Place for the Damned, which is coming out on the 30th of August. Is that correct? I have had that listen today and really, really good stuff. So for those who are like yet to listen, it's kind of that classic heavy metal, really, really punchy tunes and some really interesting themes as well. So I was having a bit of a look and it was like there was tracks exploring like the Manhattan Project and nuclear war. There's like Greek mythology. There's even like some mental health themes in there and some social issues like homelessness. There's quite a lot of cool concepts in there. So I guess what was that writing and recording process like for this, and how did some of these concepts come about?
From a lyrical perspective, I don't ever go into a song thinking I'm going to write a song about this.
Yep.
The first line comes to me from the music, and the first line determines what the rest of the song is going to be like. I don't ever try and shoehorn anything, except in the case of Minotaur. Baz called the file Minotaur, and I thought, Baz wants a song about the Minotaur, so I'll write a song about the Minotaur. And then I sent it over, and he says, that I was just giving it a name, so it wasn't called Unnamed Song. So yeah, that was completely unnecessary. I spent an entire day trying to work out how to do the full story of the Minotaur in the space of like 4.5 minutes and not miss anything out. So thanks for that, Baz.
While this song is on topic, let's give this one a listen in full. Here's Tantrum with Minotaur.
everything else, what we did this time around with the last album and with everything that's come before this album, it was very much a case of this is what Tantrum is supposed to sound like.
Yep.
These are the rules that Tantrum has. Don't write songs longer than like 4.5 minutes. Keep to the same sort of structure. Keep it very grounded in the British heavy metal style. And because we were starting from scratch, we thought we're not really going to do that. So we literally just let every single song write itself. In the case of like the Pit, I mean, Baz will tell you himself how much the Pit's changed. Go Baz.
Yeah. The last song, The Pit and the Pendulum, was one obviously I wrote based on, I'd come up with this kind of creepy intro and based, I was like, right, okay, what's creepy? Oh, Edgar Allan Poe, Mr. Creepy Show. So I reread The Pit and the Pendulum, based the lyrics all on that. And it was about 5 minutes long. So it got up to a certain point in the song, and I never felt quite happy with it. Imposter syndrome, the real thing, especially when you're like in a band with mates that can write so well. But but Chris, our bassist, who's not here, who's been, again, I think everyone in the band would agree, Chris has been like a shot in the arm for the band. He's really creative. He did all the production on the album. He came up with, like, that needs to be longer. We need to give this album a really epic close. So he added bits at the end of that song. Mark added bits just before the end of that song, and
after we were finished the recording, no less.
After we finished the
we
recording,
thought we were done, and Mark was like, "Yeah, I've just wrote another minute."
Now we need more prog.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, always. And Mark would agree. Both Marks would agree with that.
Absolutely.
Nice.
But yeah, that song just kind of it closes the album in the tradition of all of the great Maiden albums tend to end with a longer song, whether that's To Tame a Land or Richard Mariner or Alexander the Great or something like that. Just an epic to close an album out. And I don't know, that might become a Tantrum tradition as well in the future.
Just see where the songs take us, you know?
Yeah, that's awesome.
We like to discuss themes. We don't like to just write songs about going out in the piss or having a party or trying to pick up women. Every song should take the listener on a journey, even if they can't specifically relate to the song itself. They'll know somebody that can. And I think the majority of our songs, other than the ones that are complete fabrications, there's always some sort of hidden meaning in it, whether it's like in your face or whether you've got to really look for it. But there's so many things that people don't like to talk about these days that should be talked about. So like The Darkest of Times, the first words of that came from just listening to Chris's riff. He'd written the whole song, and he sent it over to me, and I started to hear the lyrics at the start. And it was originally about, I've got this weird thing where right before I fall asleep, like immediately before I fall asleep, I start to hear conversations, almost like I'm eavesdropping on people. But when my mind becomes aware enough to realize it's happening and I try and focus on them, they vanish. And it pisses me off because I'm like, this was going somewhere. This was really quite interesting. So it started to be about that. And then as I started to write, like I said, I tend to write organically. It became a lot darker, and it became about severely intrusive thoughts that even though the scenarios that you're thinking about at the time haven't yet happened and probably won't happen, your mind still creates them and still tortures you to the point where you think, but what if this does happen? And then you're twisting everything around in your head. And eventually it became some sort of like a reflection of PTSD, where there are people who, no matter what they do, can't sleep, can't break away from dark thoughts, even though there's no need because they're not present, they're not happening right here and then, but they still can't break away from them. And so, that's why that ended up being about mental health. Baz wrote the lyrics for Internal Bleeding, which is all about gaslighting, which I know nothing about, but that was an interesting one. Baz, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think that one kind of came from a lot of looking possibly at times where I've not behaved the best as a partner in the past, and like I think you really have to, because I'm one for hating on toxic masculinity and all that bullshit, and I think you've been guilty of things and it's hurt someone. The least you can do is really address it, and my way of addressing things is generally through music and writing. So that one kind of went out to someone that I might have hurt in the past, and just like know that I let them hear them, you know. So yeah, it's a tough one to. That's actually a tough one to listen to for me because it's probably the most personal song I've ever written. But
it's a really cool way to do it. Would that would have been like really cathartic for you as well?
Yeah, I think it was. It was not so much like it wasn't me going, "Oh, I'm actually great now." It was more me kind of going, "Yeah, you actually were a bit of a douche." So I think, but that is what Mark was saying. All of our songs do try to say something. I don't want to come across as like pseudo intellectual or something like that, but we're not that kind of band that'll walk around beating our chests and all that stuff. We want to talk about important things, not so much like Mark saying in your face way, but kind of subtly, and so people can make up their own minds and interpret lyrics their own way. So that's always what we strive to do nowadays when writing.
I think the underline to it. I think the underline to it is just that it has to mean something. You know, like even if it's not like a particularly deep meaning, like, you know, you look at Minotaur, it's you know, it's an exploration on the classic tale, you know, but it means that, you know, it's not just about, you know, like Mark said, going out on the piss and, you know, just being a rowdy guy, like, you know, maybe some of the previous songs were about, because it's got to mean something to us, you know, whether it's a story, whether it's a metaphor, whether it's an exploration. It's got to move us in some kind of way.
But it definitely.
And I'll tell you something else.
Process.
When I was writing that song, I ended up following a massive rabbit hole, mostly about Theseus himself. And I was disgusted to find out that, like, weeks after slaying the Minotaur for her heart, he dumped her.
Yeah.
He just tossed her aside. I didn't know that. I thought they lived happily ever after, with a bull's head up in the wall or something in a little cabin. But no, he buggered off and left her on her own. Thanks, Theseus.
Cheers, bud.
It's all about the journey, not the destination, you know?
Yeah.
He's into the chase.
No, I love that.
Mm-hmm. And of course, we've also got a trilogy in the album as well, because the last album had a trilogy. And I get a funny feeling we're going to keep doing that from now on, which I don't mind doing.
That's been a running theme. Definitely been a running theme.
I enjoyed
which
that.
I'm okay with. I love, you know, looking back at tunes. I love concept albums. I would love to try to do a full concept album at some point if we can justify it.
But I wanted to do a concept album about Jaws, and I said we could do it.
Well,
we could do that concept album about Jaws.
That'd be great. But I guess so without doing the full concept album, your current way of doing that is we'll have a trilogy of songs within the album. Those are all based around the same concept. And for this one, that's the Manhattan Project, yeah?
Yeah, Manhattan Project and what we've ended up doing to the planet, really.
Yeah.
Baz started the ball rolling because he wrote the first 2 tracks and I wrote the last one.
Yeah.
Yeah, we go from the past with the Manhattan Project and like the dichotomy between like progress and destruction, basically, that has caused.
Yeah.
Then bang up to date with Hellbound Planet, where the planet's in an awful state with, you know, climate change and the various denials of climate change.
Yeah.
And like the kind of like rape and pillage mentality of on the planet's resources. It's like make money at all costs and what that is doing to the environment. And then Mark wrote part three, which kind of goes to the future of like the planet is dying, and that's the Traveler, where we're going out to try and seed the universe with people because we've destroyed our own planet, and it takes a rather nasty sci-fi, shall we say? So
Yep.
Yeah, it goes a bit Event Horizon, doesn't it? So the guy he
Mhm.
ends up at the point where the 10,000 pods are all leaving Earth. A huge solar flare causes this massive disruption to everything and destroys pretty much all of the pods, but his gets knocked out of the original trajectory, and it wakes him up from stasis. So even though he can't move, he can't feel pain, and he'll never ever die, he's been kept alive by the pod that just tumbles through space for like millions of years, and he gets to experience like eternal, I don't know what you'd call it, darkness,
mind, yeah.
nothingness, I suppose. He can see, but he can't feel, and he can't say anything about it.
Yeah.
And that's how it ends, forever in space.
The nightmare of eternity.
Yeah.
Yeah. Are you guys big
Happy
into your
stuff.
sci-fi and stuff?
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
Any favorites?
I think we're all into this. We're all into like sci-fi and horror and like legitimate literature, all
Yeah.
that sort of thing, and comics.
Dungeons and Dragons.
Yeah.
We're all nerds. We're all nerds.
No, best kind of people. Nerds are the best kind of people.
Absolutely. Because nerds are passionate about everything that they're into.
Exactly. So what else are you guys up to? Are you touring? What's the plans with the album when it comes out? Do you do lots of local shows?
We're getting some, what is it, cooked lettuce? What are we doing?
What?
What did you call it? On Friday night, that's our plan. What'd you call it?
We got
Friday
a little
night.
get together. We got a
We're
little
having-
get together
we're having
planned.
five left.
Very classy
But,
affair.
no, we're not on tour just now. We've had a few shows here and there. We had quite a hiatus there when the whole band lineup changed.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of kind of building back up to that and gaining momentum. So what we're really trying to do right now is trying to get on with more touring bands that are coming through.
Yep.
And kind of building that up there. So right now it's essentially a new band, so
Yeah.
there's a lot of groundwork to be done. I think we've got a really solid foundation to kind of rock it off of once the album drops off.
Awesome.
I'll tell you that it's quite difficult for a lot of us because, as Baz mentioned earlier, when the last album was in the middle of the mixing process, he and I sat down and I think we wrote 13 songs in the space of about whatever his summer holiday is, like 6 weeks. And more than half of them have ended up on this new album. And we could quite easily be in the studio by December recording another album. But we love this album so much that we don't want to force another album onto people so soon. We want to let this one breathe, and as Baz said the other night, percolate.
Yeah.
So we want to
yes.
let this album percolate. But it's tough because I've already got ideas, and I'm already thinking I could just write another few songs today. But it's tough to just let the album breathe and give it space, and rather than just forge ahead and work on the next album. But I'm also kind of like dying to do it at the same time.
Well, it was like kind of traditionally speaking, even the break between Another Life and No Place for the Damned, it's quite short turnaround for a lot of bands.
Yeah.
It was almost a year, damn close to a year between the release, and
We
most
put
bands
Another
usually
Life
go on,
out in July.
Yeah. So most bands usually go on what's more like a 2-year cycle if they're having a quick turnaround. But we just this one needed to happen when it's happened because of the new lineup and just to continue the evolution of this is Tantrum now.
I think the big thing as well that where it's a blessing and a curse that we're doing all this without any kind of label support. This is all we are entirely independent.
Yeah.
So we don't have to worry I say worry about going out and doing like that 2 year cycle of an album, then a year's worth of touring or whatever, because we don't have the tours yet.
Yep.
So we do have the luxury of being able just to put out new music for people.
Yep.
So like
And we're not responsible to anybody with the albums either.
yeah, yeah.
Good.
It's great though, because we are still getting to do things like coming on podcasts like this and chat to you. And we actually heard through the week that we were getting played on FM radio somewhere in Australia, and that was a real trip.
Nice. Okay, I'll have
Then
to have a look. I wonder if it was like PBS or someone.
I'm not sure who it
It
was. Mark,
was, it was PBS, yeah. It was Gary and Pete.
I just wanted to make a little side note here. Gary and Pete run the Screaming Symphony show on PBS at 10 p.m. on Thursday nights, where they look at a bunch of heavy metal with a prog and power focus. So jump across to 106.7 FM or go to pbsfm.org.au to listen through your browser. Just like I mentioned regarding burning bitumen earlier in the episode. Awesome. Yeah. But no, there's a really awesome heavy metal culture over here in Australia. So there's heaps of like little radio stations, independent radio stations. There's also some that do like online radio stations and stuff. And they love finding independent bands all over the world and sharing them around. Like you guys would get a lot of love here,
that's
I'm
good
sure.
to know. That's good to know. It's just we do like that. That always blows my mind. No matter how many times it's happened to me, like hearing songs that you've written with your mates in a bedroom somewhere in rainy Glasgow in Scotland, and it's getting played over in the States, or it's getting played in Australia, or it's getting played in Europe somewhere, and that still gives me a big thrill. And especially when you hear people are liking it, I'm like very grateful for that.
Yep. Have you gotten a very good response to the singles that you've released so far? And lots of feedback?
God.
Awesome.
It's been crazy. I mean, the last album, I think we got maybe 4 or 5 reviews in total, because the album was delayed so much that we basically got the final masters back. We had to remaster it. We got the final masters back 2 or 3 days before release. So we had no advanced copies.
Yep.
So, we were getting 8 out of 10s and 7 out of 10s and 9 out of 10s. But the reviews for this album have been insane. And the number of actual like legitimate stations, not just internet radio, but proper FM stations, Belgium, France. I mean, one guy that bought the album last week, we heard it on mainstream radio in Belgium during the day. Not even a rock show.
Yeah.
Which just blows my mind that we're getting that sort of exposure. But we don't have egos, so it's not like we're going to go.
Work was a real pinch me moment.
Yeah, of course,
awesome.
we would have been working at the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's nice. It's nice to see that the work that we're putting in is getting appreciated. And half the time, I'll hear the music and I'll just jot lyrics down on my phone, just as I'm hearing them, and then to know that there are people. What was it? 17,000 people have all watched the Darkest of Times video.
That's awesome.
That's weird.
The most watched video now, right?
Yeah.
It's bizarre.
That's
It's
so
a really
good.
bizarre thought.
That's a quarter of the people in the town that I grew up in. Which is weird.
That's 3 times the population of the town I'm from.
Is it?
Yeah.
No, that is absolutely fantastic. I guess most importantly for people that are tuning in, where can they find you? How can they show their support?
It's probably best to go to our main website, tantrum.rocks. Because we've got a store there. We're on Bandcamp as well.
Yep.
And there's a link tree for Tantrum Scotland where it's got pretty much everything: YouTube, social media, all that sort of stuff. But there's a bunch of bands called Tantrum, so just make sure it's the real one.
Yeah.
And yeah, as I always do when I share this out on social media, I'll make sure that you guys are tagged in everything so that it's linked directly across to your pages so that everyone can come and give you a follow. It'll also be in the description of the YouTube video so they can head straight across, give the album a listen because it will be out by the time this goes up. And I'm sure that everyone's going to absolutely love it. I think it's fantastic. And there's so much room, I think, for really good kind of traditional heavy metal. A lot of the existing bands that we love for that are, they're getting on. right? Some of them aren't.
Yep.
They're not going to be kicking for too much longer. And I think there's a lot of people doing it, but doing it to the level that you guys are doing, there's not a lot of them around, I think. So I think you guys are going to do incredibly well.
I think what you see a lot of with people who are kind of, paying tribute to the heyday of heavy metal like that, there's a lot of people who are emulating, but not so much creating with it, if that makes sense.
Yes.
They're just they're putting on the clothes and they're doing the moves, and because they wanted to be what Maiden was, what Priest was, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But there's not as many people who are taking that and being like, okay, but what if we do it?
Yes.
What is that filtered through us?
Yep. No, definitely. I think there's been a few I've seen of late that would fit that bill. Like there's Thalamite, who do kind of traditional heavy metal. They're completely emulating Aussie. And while I think there could be also a market for that, because again, Aussie's not going to, he's not really going to be doing anything anymore.
Absolutely is.
But it is very much an emulation of what he does and what he used to do. So yeah, you guys have your own sound within that space, and you're doing it really, really well. But
thank you very much.
No worries. Thank you guys for joining me. I really, really appreciate your time. And yeah.
Thank you very much, Sarah.
Thanks for having us, Sarah.
Thanks, Sarah. Thanks very much.
Bye.
It's time to change pace and talk death metal. Gosika from Australia released their very first EP, Ancient Magics. And look, these guys have been doing this live for quite a few years now, but they've finally put it down, and I am thankful. This is old school death metal with ripping riffs, and you know how much I love metal songs about metal? Well, they have one, 4-Man Mosh. Anoxide from the UK dropped their first album, Morals and Dogma, though they do have a couple of EPs behind them, like 9 years ago. This is death metal with some serious prog aspects, including some like jazz fusion in the second last track, The Weighing of the Scales. It kind of appears like they're giving listeners a bit of a reprieve from all the brutal before they jump back into blasting your eardrums with the last and longest track, To Starve in Decadence. And this one is good. Monument of Misanthropy gave us their third album, Vile Postmortem Irrematio. And I say third, but there's like weird shit going on for these guys where they split in 2018 and two of the dudes were claiming the other one was kicked out of the band. Both kept kind of playing under the same name until one finally rebranded. But anyway, this album is all based around the story of Ed Kemper, who was a serial killer in the late 60s, early 70s, who not only murdered some women, but as the title of this album suggests, he fucked their decapitated heads, including his own mothers. Perfect subject matter for some brutal death metal. But this also gives us some sick speed and technical aspects and a good dose of groove. In black metal, we had Spectral Wounds from Canada drop the album Songs of Blood and Mire, which is straight up visceral black metal with this great production that captures a raw feel without dampening all the little details. This next one is from a black metal artist, but it kind of isn't black metal at all. So Hemlock from the UK, they released the EP Hairs and Hedges. This is a solo project where they do a mix of dark folk, neo folk, black metal, and like the last release was black metal. This is just straight up folk. It starts off with this beautiful melody backed by the sounds of birds, and it just embodies the countryside. That continues throughout with some other animal noises thrown in for good measure. And, so this EP isn't really metal, but I enjoyed it, and I found it so easy to just shroud myself in it while I daydreamed. So there. Hellripper from Scotland dropped a new single, Fork-Tongued Messiah. And so this one was worked on during the Warlock's Grim and Withered Hag sessions, but James felt that it didn't quite fit the vibe of that album, so he decided to release it as a standalone instead. And it's a delicious little bite of blackened speed metal with a super fun cover of Red Hot Chili Peppers' punk rock classic. And it helps sate our appetites while he works on a new album. The artwork for this one was done by Rain. You'll find on Instagram as Rain of, with a V, Fire. And it is so fucking good that I went immediately to Bandcamp to purchase a shirt. Couldn't help myself. And In Aphelion from Sweden and the Netherlands gave us the album Reaper Dawn. This is a project of members of Necrophobic and Cryptosis, amongst a very impressive back catalogue of projects for the whole crew, and it's their second release. This one is really like richly layered melodic black metal that just feels really immersive, and it has again some fantastic production. For some thrash metal, we had Grave Risk from Melbourne, Australia give us their second EP, Mind Killer. This is more hardcore leaning crossover, but with that party thrash and very Aussie feel. It's really fun stuff. Zero Tolerance from Canada dropped their first EP, Tender is the Flesh, which is this really old school style thrash, but it has some major death influences happening as well, so like it's a bit death thrashy. There's a real rawness to the sound, which is kind of perfect for a first EP of a thrash metal band, and you can just tell that these kids are having an absolute blast making this music. And Drowning in Blood from Canada released their first EP, You've Won, but at What Cost? They give us traditional thrash with a bit of Death Angel feel, with loads of crushing riffs and groove. These guys are off to a great start in terms of releases, and I'll be looking forward to seeing what else we get from them. And to finish off our new releases, I have a couple of oddballs that sit outside of the other spaces we've already discussed. With Nails from the US dropping the new full-length album, Every Bridge Burning. And by full length, it's a snack at just over 17 minutes long. But it's grindcore power violence, so that makes sense, right? This is 17-ish minutes of unrelenting heaviness and a whole lot of fun. Our last one is Eisregen from Germany, who released their 16th album, Abart. And with 15 albums before this one, these guys obviously have a bit of history behind them, with a couple of their albums being outright banned in Germany. But they're fucking bizarre in that, like, they play gothic metal, but then black metal. Some songs are a blend of the two, while others lean completely one way. And some tracks have that black and roll sound that I really love. It's really cheeky and interesting, and I really enjoyed this one overall. So if I were to take from all of June's offerings and select a top 5, it would be at number 5, Hail Darkness, Death Divine. 4, Sidewinder, Talons. 3, Hammerfall, Avenge the Fallen. 2, Monument of Misanthropy, Vile Postmortem Irrematio. And my top pick for the month would be In Aphelion with Reaper Dawn. I'd love to know, what was your favourite release for August? Drop me a comment, shoot me a message through social media, or email me at sinandsteel@outlook.com to let me know, or to reach out if you want to get involved in or appear on the show. If you enjoyed the show, please like, subscribe, and make sure to follow Sin and Steel on social media. Thanks again for tuning in for this episode of Sin and Steel, What's New in Metal. I'm your host, Serotonin, and sinners, until next time, stay metal.